So I'm just hit record. I'm recording the class. The first part is not so important, but I think I'm recording from now. And so I've sent a group of you into a breakout room. The rest of the class is here with me. We're going to talk about the essays that were submitted, the VIP essays. I'm just doing a little bit of a summary. So when the class is online and if someone looks at it or one of you look at it, they will have some context. I'm taking a look at the chat now. Let's see. Welcome. True. It says that I need access in order to see that. Great. Okay. Perfect. True. I'm sorry to get off topic, but it says need permission. Nope. No problem, Samantha. I have okay. Okay. And okay, great. So first thing is going to be access, right? So I'm going to just chill here for a second. Who needed access? It was like so far at Nahome, who was in the breakout room. Adrian, you just wrote true to me. So I'm not sure what you meant by true, and then Nahome's in the breakout room. So I'm just getting the folks in the breakout room situated to make sure they have what they need. Let me see, Samantha. Samantha, try and see. Okay, here we go. Okay, Adrian, good. Right. All right, good. So I'm gonna start with Adrian's question. He said didn't know that we needed a thesis statement for the essay. So that's one of the basic things that we need for every essay. So every essay you write will need a thesis statement. Okay, Samantha got it. Good. So I think Jalan should be able to access theirs. I mean, Nahome as well. So 1 second, I'm just gonna check in on the room.
And that is kind of, oh, he forgot to record.
No, it's fine.
Yeah, you would have, go ahead.
I just wanted to just make sure, because I know Nahome has sent me a note that they didn't have access to their essay. So I wanted to make sure that they did.
Yeah, I can't find my essay, Professor.
Yeah, David can't find it in his email.
Okay, but also if you go to the link, because I see a link from you, Nahome, that you're requesting access to it. And
yeah, I got it.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay. So David, you still can't see yours?
Yeah, I would do. Can you tell me which email you sent it to?
Yeah, hold on a second.
And when you're done with that, Professor, I have a question. Mhm.
It looks like DRIVE 3277 at stu.ostos.tv.
Yes, that's my school ID, but I didn't get it.
Do you have another? Does I have another email? I wasn't sure if it was yours. It says Devito_Devito iCloud.
Yes.
Let me try sending it there too. Okay.
Okay. Oh wait, no, I found it. Don't send it.
You got it? Okay.
Nice. Excellent.
I think so. Wait, dear student, Thursday, 10:14. The way it's send it. No, I'm lying. Do I do it? No, this is not it. I'm sorry.
That's not it. Okay, so I'll send it. All right. And what's your question, Victor? Before I go back.
Oh, I believe when the students ask if they'd have time to revise their essay, if they could submit a second revision for you.
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think that answers. I think that was Nahom who asked.
Yeah, no, I was gonna say, are we gonna have to like redo it and submit it again? That's what I
It'd
meant.
probably be in your best interest.
Yeah.
Okay.
So let me just share. I'm going to share with the whole class, but normally you I have two rules. Like one rule is that if you get an F or a D, that you have to revise it, right? For every essay. If you ever get an F or a D, you must revise the essay.
It's an awesome rule.
Yeah. And then but then you also have the options to revise the essays if students want to. I mean, I think you have up to 2 revisions, but if you want to do more, I'm open to doing more because this whole process is through revision is how you get better. So
that's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a very generous
Everybody
policy.
here got a D.
Say it again.
Everybody in this class got a D.
No, I'm just saying that if you get a grade of a D or an F in your paper, you have to revise it. Because that indicates that there's some things that are not rising to the top, and we have to work on those things to bring your grade up. That's why.
Mm-hmm.
So for David, you still don't have your essay, right?
And I should want to jump. Let me check my junk now.
I'm gonna send it to both of them again.
Nahom and Jalan,
All right, I'm gonna leave David. If you don't see it, I'll come back and check. But you should be able to see it.
Mm-hmm. And if go ahead, Professor. I'm sorry.
I got it. Yes, I got it. I got it, Professor.
All right, good.
I'm gonna need permission, so I'm gonna request it before you leave.
Okay. Okay.
Hello.
Yeah, did you get it?
No, I don't know what you look like. It's not popping up.
Because I see
I
that
just see my.
it said that you requested like Tamir Rivera.
Yeah, that's my son email. I don't know why it's pops up like that. Okay, I got. I'm in there.
You got it? Okay, good.
All right,
Yeah.
awesome.
Whoa, it's a lot of mistakes. No, it's not.
No, nothing's a mistake, just corrections, things we can fix. Don't worry about it. Okay. All right. Now that we all have access to the documents themselves, just to reiterate, see, Professor, enjoy. We're looking through our documents.
I'm back. Just had to clear up several folks who didn't have access to it. But at this point, everybody here has access to it, right? Let's see, got it. They're still helpful. Okay, got it. Yeah, so I left off saying that. Let me show you two quick examples, right? Let's share my screen. So I'm going to share my screen a moment. What you could see here, these are two thesis statements from the last exercise, the last thing. So here's one says, in my opinion, I believe everyone in your life has an impact on you, whether it's good or bad. As with the great, I should say, grand impact in my life, I would definitely say my daughter. Also, many people say their kid or kids turned their lives around, but mine really gave me life and made me think about doing more than just living in the moment. So here, again, it's unclear whether there's a thesis statement inside of that, right? Also, we understand that the person is talking is a parent. We understand that it's their kid that they're talking about, and that specifically their daughter. And but we don't know much else about the daughter other than the person's kid. So think about that in the introduction. How do you introduce the person? And then the thesis statement would list the things that they would discuss as the characteristics of their child. So one of the things that I saw in the essays that sometimes people talked about the person, right? They said this person impacted. The reason why they're amazing is because the effect they had on me. They helped me to be stronger. They helped me to go back to school. They helped me to make better decisions. They helped me become a better person by caring more for other people. They helped me. So there, it was talking about more about the impact. The characteristics was more how they reflected on themselves. And some essays were about the other person. This person is great because they took care of me when I was sick, because they encouraged me when I was feeling down, and they, you know, um, gave me good advice. They always give me good advice and steer me in the right direction. So it was more about that was more about themselves. But let me say, they're caring, they're supportive, and they are smart. Right? That was the one that I saw. They're smart. They know how to figure things out, and I learned from them. So a lot of it was so the essays kind of had, or they could waver back and forth, but they either talked about how the person impacted them or the impact they had on the person. So those characteristics would be the thing that made up the thesis statement. So like, let's say if, let's just read the second one. Someone that I consider a VIP person in my life is my mom. She's a caring, strong, and the most loving person that I know in this life. I'm very lucky to have her as a mom in my life. She is everything that I needed in this life. She is a mom who is completely doing her role as a mother and in this life. As a mom, I would have to love to follow her footsteps in my life. Okay, I already see this. I didn't correct this on yours. This in my life, in this life, in my life gets repeated a lot. So I would take some of that out. But in this one, we get the mother. We don't know too much about the mother, right? But we're going to learn about the mother because they're going to tell us. And right here, so this is a good example. The thesis statement doesn't always have to be at the end of the paragraph. This is the thesis statement right here in this paper. In this paper, thesis statement happens to be right the second sentence. She's a caring, strong, and the most loving person that I know in this that I know. Let's go like this. Right? And so with this, and I know this because I remember this essay, the student, the first paragraph, right, was about mom is caring. Second body paragraph, mom is strong. And the third body paragraph, loving. Right? So we learned about these three aspects of this person. I can tell you this because I read the essay. And they followed it pretty wonderfully through the essay. So they did that, and then of course the last paragraph was a conclusion. They wrote a conclusion. I can't remember the conclusion, but I remember they had one. So so this would be, if you think the structure of the essay, right? It's an introduction, right? And then introduction always, I'm going to say this, Adrian, to everyone, always has a thesis statement. The thesis statement is a roadmap. In this case, we see caring, right, as one aspect. I'm going to make that pink. The other one is strong, right? And we'll make that another color, make it green, and loving, right? The three characteristics inside of the thesis statement that they listed, right? And let's make that pink. And so again, so in the first body paragraph, right, deals with the first aspect, right, with this one, right? The second body paragraph deals with the second aspect that the person listed, right? And then the third body paragraph followed with the last aspect of what the person was talking about, right? So the thesis statement here, right, lists what the three things that the essay will talk about, and then the bodies explain them further. Inside the bodies, not only would you talk about what does it mean for this person to be caring, you would give examples of what it, if there are, they were caring because one time I was sick and they came over and they took care of me. Another time they show they were caring was because I was really worried I was going to fail an exam and they called me up right before and encouraged me and showed me caring. They're strong because they were at facing, you know, whatever. I mean, I'm trying to think of, they're, you know, we were having financial troubles and they found a way to get everything paid and organized so that we were not evicted from the house. They found a second job, or they talked to the land, whatever. You know, they were showing strength. So the idea with the body paragraphs is like, not only do you name what it is, but you give examples, right? And the same thing, and you follow it through. And then the conclusion is never like I encountered some one sentence conclusions. This conclusion is usually not a sentence, right? A conclusion is, in a sense, a bit of a summary of the essay, right? It's about restating some of the points that you made on it. So in it, the conclusion for this one would include aspects that, you know, therefore my mom continues to be the most important person in my life, a very important person, because to this day, they continue to support me. They're a very strong person. They show their strength in every way and every day. Their care comes with every phone call, and their love, you know, just embraces all the aspects of my life and help me to move forward and be strong and, you know, and be a good student or something like that, right? So that the conclusion is commenting on what you just wrote in the essay. It's not just or it's not simply restating, you know, my mom is caring, strong, and the most loving person that I know. And the sentence, and that's conclusion. It doesn't do that either. It expands on it. Okay. So now I'm going to pause with a little bit of this lesson, and I want to either in the chat, as some of you have already done, or either in the chat, or I should make sure this is okay, cool. Either in the chat or in unmute yourself, and ask me questions or something that you're not familiar with, and we can either continue the conversation. But I want folks to look at their essays and to be clear. And if any of you get an essay done in the next 24 hours, I'll make sure that we grade it before before the weekend, so you have a chance to look at it. And I'm already making the decision, because the second part, we're going to have the next one due on Sunday. I'm going to move it to Tuesday, so that at least we get these questions. We have another class. I'm going to say Thursday, so that we have class, and then you'll have a couple days to get that other essay in. But I think it's fine for us to slow down. Yes, Umu.
I have a question. You said in your commentary, I don't need to put no line space between the paragraph.
Yes.
Do
people understand that?
I don't understand.
Okay, so let me bring up something and show you all what happens. And that's a formatting question, So formatting is important. Everything's important, but formatting is important in the sense. Let's see. Excuse me. Oh, where's this untitled page we're working on? Okay, so I'm going to share my screen again, to illustrate what, and I'm using 2 paragraphs here. So these are 2 paragraphs. If you can just look at them, right? Like, this is what I mean. Sometimes I see this, and let's pretend there's 2 more paragraphs. I'm going to add 2 more. Right? And so sometimes programs automatically put extra spaces, and this is what I mean by no extra line space. Like this should not be an extra line there. This should go right there. And then I'm going to go down here and take out the extra line spaces. So this is what I mean by no extra line spaces in between. That means there may have been an extra space between the paragraphs.
Okay.
There may have been extra space, and I fixed it, and I just made a note so that students would know. I mean, that's one of the common things I see, but right. Any other questions or any things that people saw in their papers they wanted more of an example of, or an explanation of? And then, of course, we're doing this together as a group, because I think an example of what Umu just said, what Umu just requested, and I was able to show. That happened in other papers. So in case that happened in somebody else's paper, now everybody can see it, or if it's something that happened once or twice and you know, or something you don't do, then fine, you're good. You don't have to worry about that one. You can check that one off. But and then of course there's the opportunity to have one-on-ones with me. Like I have a group working with Victor. If any of you have a paper that you want to set up an office hour, and I think not this class, someone else from another class is meeting with me tomorrow to talk about their paper, we will be, we can do that as well. So if you have something that you don't want us to be private, we could work on it together. But if you have anything that you want to ask in general, like even a comment in the class, and then if not, I'll go over some of the common errors that I see. Any other questions? Everybody was able to access their papers. That's why I was away in the breakout room with the other group, because making sure that everybody was able to access their paper. Okay, so let me check the chat. There's actually, Professor, is it that important to state the person name in the essay since it feels like an invasion of privacy in A's friend's case? So one of the things you could do when you're writing personal essays, a lot of times, one of the things you could do is you could use a pseudonym, like use somebody else's name. So it's not necessarily, and you don't have to name them. you can kind of make up a name. Or another thing that you could do is, but I think more than giving the person a name, because many people said my mom, my dad, my daughter, right? Which is okay. They don't have to say my daughter, Emily, or my father, Muhammad, or something like that. That you could say, you could use a pseudonym, or you can just, as long as what's more important is that we learn something about them. Like if you're doing an introduction, and particularly if you're doing it on a friend, that we learn something about the friend, you know what I mean? That you give us information, they don't have to give us private information, but, I don't know, maybe something about the friend's personality that attributed, that really is going to feed the essay, right? That's going to support it. So yeah, so not that you have to necessarily divulge private information, but one of the things, and this is something people who write nonfiction face often, right? People, and this is considered a nonfiction piece, right? You're writing about an actual real human being. And sometimes people who write nonfiction pieces face that. They face whether to use the actual names. I can tell you that I have, I have a series of readings and essays that I read about my childhood growing up in the Bronx and the Southview projects. And very often I'll use names of people, but there are certain people because of certain situations. And because I really, for my own thing, my own kind of sense of respect, have not talked to those people about the situation. And so I've changed the name of those characters and I say that. I say, all these are true stories, but some of the names, you may have seen that on some TV things, but some of the names have been changed to protect the privacies of the individuals. So I want to say that to that. So I hope that satisfies, right? And Samantha's responding to them. So a thesis is more like the characteristics. So Samantha, in this essay, the thesis is the characteristics, because that is what the prompt was asking you, right? If we look at the prompt, that was given to the class that was about for the essay, the description of it, in addition to talking about formatting and talking about all the other things that it talked about, it said select somebody and then identify at least 3 reasons why they are important, right? And so before we talked about characteristics, but I mean, it could be reasons, but as long as there's 3 characteristics or 3 reasons why the person is important, then that was what the prompt was asking you. And I think it's important to be able to read prompts and see what they're asking of you so that you can respond to them properly. So that's my, and I think Samantha, in your case, if I'm remembering, I think yours also was one of the essays that that didn't have a clear thesis, but did speak about the aspects of it. So yeah. Okay, no, that's good. No, don't worry. Yeah, dragging on is important. You don't want to be too repetitive, as we saw in that. Yes, no, I hear what you're saying. But I think what's important to understand is that, the introduction, in this case, like if I switch it a little bit, right? Because we're going to write another essay in response to another essay. And so for that's where we're doing all this summary and all this stuff so that you can take a longer work and be able to condense it and be able to talk about it. But whatever it is, the introduction introduces the essay, in this case, introduces the person. But then the thesis statement lets us know what the rest of the essay is going to be about. So if we were writing an essay, I can't remember, like on how to get our minds to read, remember that essay that we looked at? And it says, it could say, name 3 things that would help our mind to read. And one would be improve education, change testing, and provide more general education, right? Opportunities. So then we would say so I know that this essay is going to deal with these 3 issues. There may be other issues in the essay that will address it, but the ones you selected, the 3 you selected were those 3. So these 3 are the ones that your essay will be focused on. Okay. Other questions?
Professor, I have a question. So with the essay that we just recently wrote, is there any way that we can fix it and get the grade changed?
Thank you, Ariel. Let me definitely speak about that. So general revision policy, this is a general, if you submit something to me, and this is not about Ariel or anybody in specific, but just a general note that if you get a grade of an F or a D, that I almost require you or request you to do a revision. And that's simply because if you got an F on an assignment, that means there's something did not connect, and we need to work on it to make sure that you don't get an F in the next assignment, but definitely not in the class. But with this assignment, especially because of the very first one, that you do have the opportunity to revise this. And that's why I spend time, writing all the notes and making all these corrections, trying to be as clear as possible so that you could look at your paper and say, okay, either I'm going to go through it nice and slow and understand everything the professor said, so that you could able to then take it and make a revision and do another shot. And then that grade, the revised grade, takes the place of the grade you got. So if you got a C and you revise it and you get an A, that grade changes from a C to an A, right? It doesn't get combined and then some averaged out. It just becomes the new grade. So that's it for the revision. Other questions?
Professor, I have a
Yes.
question.
Mhm.
First of all, I'm sorry about my camera. I don't feel very good today.
Oh, it's fine. It's okay.
Yeah, can you repeat again what thesis statement means? Like what is, because last time I didn't have it like very, very clear.
Mhm. Okay. So one of the things I'm gonna do two things. Just a general note about a thesis statement. Thesis statement is, if you could think of the introduction as a separate piece of the essay, right? But the meat of the essay are the body paragraphs, right? So the thesis statement basically tells the reader what the body paragraphs are about, right? So if you have a prompt, that means, or a question, like the question you have to answer, and it's asking you for at least, could you name at least 4, I'm trying to think of, I'm gonna do a bit of a leak, a little bit of no, I'm not gonna do the leak, I'm gonna leave it separate. So if you stick to taking my parents to college, because we remember that's one of the first essays we read, right? If the prompt said, could you name 4 reasons or 4 examples of how the student was not getting used to college, right? If that is your prompt and it is asking you to do those 4 things, when you write an intro, then you would say, this essay is called Taking My Parents to College, is written by Janine Capo Cruzet. It is talks about a young person going to the college for the first time, who comes from an immigrant family of people who've never been to college. And in it, we learn the different ways that they had trouble acclimating, right? That's the introduction. Part of that saying, because the question asks you, can you name 4 examples of how, right, write an essay answering this question, naming 4 examples of how they had trouble acclimating to college, right? So after you do all that introduction and explain it, then you say, there are 4 ways in which the essay showed that the student had trouble acclimating to college. The first is this one, the second is this one, the third is this one, and the fourth is this one. That stating of what the 4 things are in response to the question, that is the thesis statement, right? And that's why they call it a roadmap, because then if you said reason number 1, reason number 2, reason number 3, reason number 4 as part of your thesis statement, then the first body paragraph explores reason number 1, the second body paragraph explores reason number 2, the third body paragraph explores reason number 3, and then the fourth paragraph explains reason number 4, and then the paragraph that follows it, the one after, will be the conclusion, right? Is that any more clear, Miguel, or you're still a little foggy?
No. I understood way more better today. Yeah. Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Okay. All right. Yeah, it's one of those things. I think, I don't know why. There's something, I had it when I was in college. They even say thesis now. You're like, okay, what is that? There's a moment when you do that, but it's really not that, that much in a thesis statement. It is basically stating what you will talk about in the essay, right? At some point. And sometimes in these essays, these questions are kind of constructed for you to have like 2 or 3 or 4 aspects that you will then fan out through each body paragraph. But it's just really a structure. Sometimes a thesis statement it could be a question, right? Like, to say, is it possible for man to walk on the moon? And then the essay goes to answer the different ways that it's possible, right? So,
Yeah,
okay.
it sounds like really like professional in that kind of way, like,
Mhm.
yeah, but thank you for the information. Professor.
Of course, of course. All right. Aminel, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I consider, well, I don't know if I'm confused. I just believe that like the thesis statement sounds a lot like the introduction to me.
Yeah, I know it could sound like that, but the thesis statement is not synonymous. They're not the same thing, right? As an introduction. So the introduction includes the thesis statement. It's a part of it. And I'll show you the example again that we showed that I showed a little while ago. But the thesis statement, the introduction does a little more, right, than the thesis statement. The introduction has to name if you're in the case of this assignment, right? If you're talking about a very important person, it has to name who that person is. We have to know who that person is. So it does that, right? And then it has to describe something about that person, right? And then it's gonna then the thesis part. Here's the thesis, because it's part of the introduction, is in that first paragraph. We'll list the three things you will talk about. So let me share my screen again so we can, because I thought that was a good example. Let's see where's that. Untitled, right? So here, let me get rid of all the colors. Right, and then move this out. So this here, right, this paragraph, right, it starts out, this is an introduction. Someone that I consider a VIP person in my life is my mom. She's a caring, strong, and the most loving person that I know. I'm very lucky to have her as a mom. She's everything that I need in this life. She's a mom who's completely doing a role as a mom I would love to follow in her life in my footsteps. Right. So this is telling you something about a mother, right? The person feels lucky that she's everything, that the mother is completely doing her role as a mother, right? And in here, I see they named the three characteristics there, right? And then I read the essay, and the essay broke it down that way. So this worked there. It's fine that it could be there, but I'm going to take it out for a second, right? And so now this doesn't have a thesis, right? So this is someone that I consider a VIP person in my life is my mom. I'm very lucky to have her as a mom in my life. She's everything that I need in this life. She's a mom who's completely doing a role as a mother in this life. As a mom, I would love to follow in her footsteps. So it introduces us to mom and how this person feels about it. But at this point, I don't quite know, because I'm looking for, because the question is asking for what other name at least three characteristics, right? Or three reasons why this person is your VIP, right? So I could even put that same sentence at the end, right? And I may have to change the grammar a little bit, because I could say, instead of she is, I could say my mom, right, is a caring, strong, is caring, right? I have to change the grammar because I moved it, right? My mom is caring, strong, and the most loving person that I know. So now I know that this person's going to speak about these things about the mother, right? So the thesis statement in this case, right, is the statement, is the sentence. Maybe in this class we should call it a thesis sentence. So that just don't say that outside the room, okay? But for this class, we'll call it a thesis sentence, right? Because it is the sentence that tells you what you will discuss in that paper. So, this might complicate you, but I'm going to do it, right? Like sometimes I'm going to assume that most of you will have an opportunity or desire to continue studying beyond Ostos. You go to a four-year college, and some of you may make a decision to go on to graduate school, right? And so for instance, for when you go to graduate school, your big project, your defining project, your paper, right? The thing that you're going to tell them what you're studying is about. Like for me, I was fiction, right? When I tell people what my line of interest is about, it's about a fictional piece. What I'm about is writing fiction. So that is called your thesis. Like, what is it that, at the end of your studies, like, what is it about, right? So in a smaller essay like this, your thesis statement is, what is this essay about? Tell me, what's your essay about? And you say, all my essays is going to talk about how my mother is caring, loving, and strong. That's what my thesis statement is. That's what this essay is about. So the thesis statement or the thesis sentence, and Joshua, I know you're just joining the class. We're talking about the essays that that were returned, and so people are having this opportunity to ask questions, and we're going over some of the smaller details and the finer points, and making sure that there's clarification. Before we continue writing essays, we need to make sure these points. And I'm going to tell you something. We may have all of this, and Miguel, you may have gotten clarity at this moment, and then like tomorrow you'll be like, wait a minute, what did the professor say? The beauty of this is that we record the class, and you could rewind and watch it and say, okay, maybe I could, it'll make sense to me there. But we were talking about the thesis statement. So so you could see that I could have had the thesis statement at the end, right? I just have to change the grammar a little bit so that it works there. But I'm going to go back and back and back and back and back and back. And that's where originally the student put it there. But it has to appear somewhere in the first paragraph, somewhere in the introduction. The thesis statement has to be, and I'll just highlight it here so that we can see it. And I apologize, I need to make it even bigger for those of you who may be on your phones, right? So we could see it nice and big. Right, so that the yellow is the thesis statement actually, and I know this because like I said, I read it, and when I read it, this particular student did a good job of the body paragraphs corresponding to the items in the thesis, to the characteristics. Caring, that's why this person, their mother's the important person. The mother was strong and loving, like a loving person. They were loving. These were the body paragraphs. Boom, boom, and boom. And then there was the conclusion. All right. So yeah, so that was good. It's good for us to clarify that there is a distinction between the introduction and the thesis statement. The thesis statement is part of the introduction. The introduction does more work, right? Like for instance, the next essay you're going to write, it's writing about another essay, right? So you're not so that introduction is going to introduce the reader to the essay. It's going to say, this is the person who wrote it. This is the title of the essay. This is what the essay is about, like write a 2 or 3 sentence summary, right? And then there'll be a thesis statement. So that will make up the whole introduction for that particular essay. Yes, actually, Adrian, we're saying thesis sentence because with these essays that are like 3 to 4 pages, the thesis statement should be 1 sentence, right? It could be 2, right? If you feel like I can't say this in 1 sentence, but it could be 2, but they should be right next to each other. It shouldn't be like 1 sentence in the top and 1 sentence someplace else, right? In it, the sentences should follow. But for the way I know I have organized the prompts, you could answer the thesis statement should be just 1 sentence inside of the introduction. So that's a good question.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Good. I'm just checking out the chat to make sure. All right, any other questions with that? So yeah, so Joshua, I know you joined class a short while ago. I don't know, maybe you were here and you got bumped out in your back. But for Joshua or anyone else who just joined, anyone who submitted an essay at this point has gotten my feedback. We're taking a moment to take a look at it. There's a group working in a breakout room at the moment who are sharing some information, and I'm doing a little bit of an experiment of having Victor work with some people. I'm trying to recreate. A lot of times what I would do with this particular class, if we were in the classroom, literally this would be a quiet moment, and I would be walking around, with maybe looking at Umu and looking at Miguel and looking, Samantha. Okay, cool. And looking, or Ariel, this is the names I could see, and I would like look at your paper and be with you, and Victor would be circulating as well. So trying this approach to see how we could try to recreate some of that attention to detail instead of particularly in writing. Yeah, I think this is when I talk about us having a dialogue on the page, this is part of what I talk about, that you write, I respond, you get to read my response, and then you get to have an opportunity to revise and change and to make that essay stronger. So when you write your next essay, the next essay for all of you, and I'll say this, I mean, the reason why I started the class talking about the disconnect between the thesis statement is I saw that amongst many papers. And when I see it in general in the class, that means something is not getting across. But now, hopefully for your next essay, when you write your next assignment, that's fine, Joshua, that one of the things you're going to look at when you finish your essay, you're like, okay, where's my thesis statement? I want to make sure my thesis statement is there and it's clear, and the professor is not going to write a note, where's the thesis statement, right, for your next papers, right? Or for this one, when you revise it, you will be clear on what it is that you need to do. So, more questions? Let's see. Okay, that's fine. Yeah, now overall, I think, one of the things I will say as a class is that in terms of the writing, from the papers that were submitted, the writing itself was pretty good. What we're going over is really a lot of being clear on how to structure an essay. And I think everybody, I could say just almost everybody, maybe almost everybody, maybe with the exception of one or two, understood the very basic idea of an essay having an intro, a body, and a conclusion. Even if those of you who wrote the one sentence conclusion, there was a conclusion in that one. So whether it was like a short conclusion, it was present. So you knew that the essay needed a conclusion. So I was very encouraged by that as well. All right, I'm going to check on the breakout room to see how they're doing. And then, and then I'll be right back. I just want to check in with them. Okay, let me see if I can do this. Yeah, I'll be right back. So I'm just popping in for a second. See how's it going.
It's going well. 1 second, my bad. So here, the topic sentence will look something like Huey Newton's, let's say, books on race and revolution affected me as an individual because I learned that Black revolutionary politics would, and whatever, right, would become the foundation of my life, right? And this is just an example of someone outside of my family. I think this is kind of reminiscent of what your example is. Basically, how did this person affect you? What impact they had on you, right? Because they're a VIP. And then from there, provide a story, right? And you have a person who is a part of television shows. So, you can write about the television show and how that, and maybe your favorite episode or why you love that television that television show so much, and then go into how the person either portrayed a character that, and that's why you find them as your VIP, or how the person stood honest, and that's why they're your VIP. Basically, after that story, we want to explain how that story, scenario, etc., how that story makes them your VIP. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're gonna erase the topic?
You don't have to erase the top. No, you don't have to erase it. What I'm saying is we can kind of rearrange it into having into being a little bit more condensed, I would say, right? So I would say here, I can't read it out loud, but what I would probably just try to find the main topic of the entire body paragraph, which is how those television shows impacted you, right? And just write it as a blanket statement, kind of like, X person in their TV series affected me in this way, and I still watch, period, right? Then the next sentence will the next part of that body paragraph will consist of a story or of the television show in particular. And I know you, and you definitely do that here. What we really need after is an explanation of how this, impacted you and why this person is a VIP. Okay.
All right. Okay.
So you don't have to really rewrite anything else besides the topic, in my opinion. But what you do need to include is an explanation of how this person, why this person's your VIP. Okay.
So what you highlighted in green, you want me to like refix that, like rearrange that?
Yeah. To rewrite that, and then the second portion highlighted in green was just me like showing that those two ideas connected. But yeah, you could rewrite that.
Okay.
And make it more like exact to your thing.
Okay.
All right.
So,
David,
Victor,
were you able? Go ahead, Professor.
Did everybody get a chance to go?
Yeah. I asked David to write me a kind of like thesis statement because he was missing one. And I've already spoken with Nahom and Jalan, and I was about to go back to David to readdress his thesis statement.
Okay. Well, all right. I'm going to give you just a few more minutes because we're going to take a break. And if we need a little more, like another 5 or 10 minutes after the break, we could do that as well.
All right. Thank you.
All right. So we'll go for another 5 minutes. Okay. And then I'll bring you all in.
Got you. I'm sorry for, yeah. All right. See you in a second.
I'm back from the breakout room. It's such a strange thing to be outside of there. All right. So what we're going to do next is we're going to, in a few minutes, we're going to take a short break so we can, recalibrate, clean the palette of our brains. If you also take a look at your essays, if you haven't already, then great. If you, I'm assuming everybody submitted it on Blackboard. If any of you ended up emailing it and not putting it on Blackboard, you should let me know so I can look for them. And that's that. So, all right. So the second part of the afternoon, we're gonna go look at the assignments. We're gonna look at a video together. We're gonna look at speak a little bit about the Chimamanda video and talk about that. And then we will, which is kind of introducing us to another series of essays that we're going to look at. And we are going to, and then we're going to talk about the next assignments, because I'm going to shift and calibrate things a little bit so that we can I want to make sure we're on a stronger solid ground in terms of the essay writing. So we're going to do that. All right. While I was out, any questions come to mind? Or let me just check the chat to see if there's anything in addition that. Yes. So, and anyone, regardless of your grade, you could revise this essay, right? So if you want an opportunity to revise the essay, regardless of your grade, you can. I will say yes, and you can certainly do that. Okay. All right. So then we'll do that. What time is it? It is, the clock thing is really small. All right, it's 1:46. Why don't we say at 2:05, right? At 2:05, we'll come back and then we'll continue the second half of the class. All right, so I'll see you all in a few minutes, like 20 minutes. Yes, stretch Balang. I saw you stretching. All right, I'll see you on a little.
Primary school, but in college, what we need to do is always identify the subject. The reason why is because proper syntax requires us to always be able to identify, not only identify the subject, but also identify what that subject is doing, which is the verb. And this sounds very weird, but just, future reference, that's the case, right? It's okay. So here, this is a perfect claim. My Tamir is my VIP because the love I have for him is beyond the love I have for anyone else. All right, so we should say that's perfect. His smartness, his laziness, and his emotions is what drives me to love him the way I do. Okay, All right, so I see what we did here. We kind of split our thesis into 2 sentences, which is okay. But the goal of a thesis is to always
Just one
have that.
sentence.
Yeah, right. But not that it's one sentence, to have that claim and those 3 reasons in one sentence. Then you can have an additional sentence going into those 3 reasons if you want. That's never like no one's against that really. It's a little advanced for where you're at right now, and it's okay if you want to do something like that. But what I would suggest is say something like Tamir's my VIP because I love him more than anyone, comma, right? Because
Yeah, no, I was gonna put the comma once you told me you wanted one sentence.
Mhm.
I know how to fix it.
Hold up. Let me just show you, right? Tamir's my VIP because
But I can't see it's a picture on the phone.
what do you mean a picture? No. So look at your document. Don't look at the Zoom. If you look at your document, the both of us can access it together, right? So here we have Tamir is my VIP because I love him
So, Nahum, we're on break if you wondering why you're not in the room.
Hello? Are we on break?
Yeah, David. I'm sorry. I guess we weren't clear. Yeah. So after our breakout rooms, the professor immediately put us into break. I believe we're resuming shortly though. So within a minute or two. Okay. All right. Cool. 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 All right. See you soon. And also anyone who was in the breakout session with me, or any one period, of course, ever. If you guys want to direct message me questions or concerns or re-explanations, do so. I can, re-explain things, and I can even, if you weren't a part of my group, I can explain it there too, whichever you guys want. I'm here to help, so I want to help as much as possible.
Okay, we're back. It's 2:08 and 2:05. So let's return back together. Victor, I see you came up first. I know you were working with David. Did you get to put a period at the end of the discussion, or do you both need to speak another moment?
David, would you want to speak for a little bit longer, or do you feel like, because I did I feel like we did kind of like we were able to close before we came to the session, but if he wants an additional few minutes, I'm okay with providing that.
It doesn't matter to me because the will continue on. We can finish after. I don't matter.
Okay. All right. Well, it seems like you're on the same page. All right. So we're going to do a couple things, right? Because I feel, so just to bring Victor, Jalan, and David and Nahom up to speed in the general session, we kind of did probably in a more macro way what you all were doing in a more micro way, and what seemed to be kind of a general consensus is really a deeper clarification of the thesis statement, right? And one of the things that some students raised in the chat and raised in discussion is that there was some students there was some level of confusion between a thesis statement and introduction. They thought maybe it was the same thing. So we did clarification for folks to understand that the thesis is a part of the introduction. So yeah, it's part of it, but it's not the introduction. And we actually played with an idea of instead of calling it a thesis statement, we called it a thesis sentence. And I told them not to say this outside of this classroom, but to think of it as a thesis sentence. So that it's actually a sentence that's going to state what you're going to do in the essay, what you're going to describe, what you're going to discuss in the essay. So also, and I said, because thesis statements can be longer, sometimes a thesis statement might need a paragraph, but we're talking about papers that are like 20 pages or 25 pages long, where it may be more complicated, or sometimes the thesis could be just a question that gets posed and gets explained throughout it. So we're playing with the idea of a thesis sentence because the papers are writing about 3 to 4 pages, and most likely you can condense what you need to say or respond to the prompt in that way. So I was gonna do something else, but I'm gonna continue our brains. We're in thesis land, and I know that I said let's just take a moment to take our break and cleanse the mental palate, right? Because I want to look at the assignment, one of the assignments, and I'll respond to your assignments individually. The next essay is really going to be looking at, is Google making us stupid, right? That is the article. And so part of this exercise or this assignment is at this point in the semester, we've read a couple of essays together, articles together. We've talked about summary, right? We've had an exercise in summary. And so really the next step is now going from the personal, right? And being able to apply this by reading an essay. And part of this is the building skills for you to do research and to do other things in the work that you're going to be doing in terms of writing and composition. So it's important for you to be able to read an article, right? To be able to pull out the main points, which is the work we did with summary, being able to identify the main points and the supporting points of the article, right? And then the other thing is responding to a prompt, right? So most likely a prompt is just a question. It's just what is what the professor or the test or whatever it is asking you to do in essay format, right? So a prompt will ask you for something to explain, might ask you to identify, might ask you to take a position, right? Sometimes a prompt might be, one of the prompts I use in my literature class, I talk about a writer named Junot Diaz, right? And sometimes if you don't know who that writer is, you will probably learn it. And if you, at some point, and if you take a English lit class with me, you will most likely learn him in 111. That's not a plug for you to take English 111 with me. I love having students repeat, but I also encourage students to experience different professors, because that's another way in which you can learn by having opportunities to learn with different folks. But sometimes the writer Junot Diaz gets criticism for his portrayal of women. And so sometimes that prompt that students get is, do you agree or do you disagree? That means you need to take a position. So the prompt, the question, what's being asked of you could vary. It's not only name 3 things, name 4 things. I mean, we're doing that for this class, for these essays, because we're building to more to different kinds of prompts, right? So for now, we have another prompt that's very similar to the prompt that you got for VIP. The VIP said, name 3 reasons why, right? And we said that's going to be the basis of your thesis statement. Your new one, and let's go to that for a second, right? And we'll start building on the next essay. And I've already made some decisions, right? So, so here, the assignment was by today at noon, and 9 of you valiantly got something in, so I applaud you. In preparation for your next formal essay, you will construct a thesis statement. The thesis statement is in response to the prompt below. So this is the prompt for the essay, right? And it says, in the article, Is Google Making Us Stupid by Nicholas Carr, identify and discuss at least 3 ways in which Google and or the internet is affecting people. Now, this is one sentence, right? There's like 3 tiny lines on this thing, but it is saying a lot, right? It's also saying your thesis statement should be 1 or 2 sentences max, right? And we talked about that. We're saying calling this a thesis sentence class. So we're trying to get into 1 sentence. If you feel like you can't, or there's a way you need to express yourself, 2, but it shouldn't be longer. And as I said in the full class, they should not be 2 separate parts of the introduction. Like if you have a 2-sentence thesis statement, part 1 of the sentence shouldn't be in the beginning and part 2 somewhere in the middle. There'd definitely be sentences that are back to back, right? It could even be like a compound sentence or something like that if you need it. But so I want us to take a look at this prompt, right? Because this prompt is saying, in the article, Is Google Making Us Stupid by Nicholas Carr, identify and discuss at least 3 ways in which Google and or the internet is affecting people. So first is asking you to look at the article, right? Google is making us stupid. So we read it, right? And when we were doing summary, the main thing to do is read it. We read most of it together and the rest of it was for you to read at home, right? And I think there was just 2 pages left. And then it's saying to identify and discuss. So identify means that you need to name something and then you have to discuss it, like say more about it. So it's asking you to do 2 things. So it's not enough to name it, and it's not just enough to launch into a discussion about something. You need to identify and discuss. And then it is saying at least 3 ways. So the term at least means at minimum. So this is asking for at least 3 ways in which, and then the second part, I'll tell you, but at least 3. So if you do 2, that's insufficient. If you do 4, that's acceptable, right? You can do more, not less, right? At least 3 ways. So it's asking for at least 3 ways in which Google, right, the search engine itself, which is the title in the title of the article, or the internet, right? So there's 2 things. So the internet is not Google. Google is a part of the internet, but the internet, when we read the article, it talks about Google search engines and that activity, but it also talks about the general use of the internet and the way in which internet presents information and how that is affecting who? Not society, not the world, but people, right? It makes it very personal. It's a personal examination, okay? So the assignment was to look at this statement, read the article, and then respond by creating a thesis statement. So I'm going to share a little bit of what I've seen in there, which I think is a good start, right? We are in the sharing mode. I'm going to the Untitled. This Untitled thing, I'll name it after today's class, just to go over the things that we're doing as if we had the blackboard, pretend, you know. So here's the thing, right? Here's the question, right? And this is the Google thesis statement assignment. So one student wrote, this is their response. They wrote, lowest performance on cognitive tasks, it's diminishing social skills, we're limited to the information they decided to share, right? So what this was really, the student was outlining, which is excellent, right? But let's be clear, this is not a thesis statement, right? So I want to give you woohoo, right, props for outlining and clearly identifying what the things are, and that's what will be in the thesis statement, right? So from this, now the student can craft a thesis statement, right? So again, I saw another student did similar thing, right? They named the 3 things: the fact that people spend a lot of time online, mental habits, meaning people don't spend time reading and concentrating, the fact that the internet provides information I'm going to say two. Easy and fast. Okay. Okay. I got the gist of it. The too much easy, fast information, it makes us lazy, right? So in this one, I have to do a little bit more searching for identifying, right? How this student here clearly identified three examples. In this one, there's some ideas in here, like this idea of spending time. This talks about an issue. It doesn't talk about how it's affecting people. Here, it just starts talking about affecting people, like the mental habits, right? And here it's talking about making us lazy, right? So these are ways it is affecting people. So remember to think about, again, looking at the question, right? Saying that name three ways that Google is affecting people, right? So they're kind of getting into the right realm with these two, but this one, it's not talking about the effect, how it's affecting them. It's just saying the activity, they spend lots of time. This is another one. It's The Google Making Us Stupid by Nicholas Carr. Says that more we use the web, the more we have to fight to stay focused on long pieces of writing, and which is true. And it also changes the way we think about certain stuff. Carr described how the internet has altered his mental habit. Example, he totally lost the ability to read and absorb longish articles. And it is also chipping away the capacity of concentration and contemplation. Right? So again, a lot of elements here. This could be hammered into a thesis statement, right? I think the beginning of it starts that, and almost the whole first line begins going into the realm of a thesis statement. But again, it would need to be more concise and clear on how it literally would list three things. And then here's another student's example who did something that the first student did, which is name three things with affects concentration, has changed the way we read and think, and it is making more machine-like, making us more machine-like and artificial, machine-like / artificial intelligence. So these are, again, the ways in which it is affecting people. So the first two really stuck to the idea of how it affects people. The second one has some of it in there, right? We needed a little more sharpening. And the third one, it created a sentence that has a lot of the elements we see in there, but this would need to be edited so that it's more concise and can show the three elements. So I'm going to respond to it. And so with this particular assignment, originally this is going to be due today, and then you were going to have the essay due on Sunday. So we're going to shift all of that. So what I want you to do, since we spent a lot of time on thesis and we looked at some examples of what you submitted, I will respond what I said here to these students. I'll respond to the rest of you. If those of you want to get something into me by tonight, I could respond. I'm just trying to be realistic. Tomorrow, I will be on campus tomorrow at 8:45 a.m. I'm going to a meeting with the president to Queens College. They're taking us to Queens College for something tomorrow. But then I'll be back in the afternoon and I have something. All right, so there may be some wiggle time, but I'll say definitely by Thursday at noon, if you get your either recraft everybody would need to have a thesis statement by Sunday. That's my new thing. So even those of you here, I will say that everybody could use a little bit of, all the submissions could use some work to craft it into a thesis statement. So just keep in mind what we talked about today, that you're trying to get a sentence, right? That you're trying to make it a thesis sentence, and that it's going to really, the ones who did the workshopping are already a step ahead, right? Who did these outlining. So they already have their three ideas. They just have to craft it into a sentence, right? And then you'll have your thesis statement. So I want you to do that for Sunday, and then your paper will be due the following Thursday instead of this Sunday. So the Thursday, let me just get the dates, and I'll send you an email as I do to follow up on this. Thursday, the 21st is when that will be due. Okay. So I wanted to do that. I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. So, I mean, I think if you look a little bit of the way this class is organized, I think it's one of the things I love about literature, one of the things I love about essays, one of the things I love about composition and writing, and et cetera, is that really, we're learning structure and we're learning thesis sentences and thesis statements. And we're learning how to do all this kind of academic writing and academic talking, because we're in the realm of exploration, right? But what are we exploring? How we think, right? How we read. And I think it's important for us as we're continuing at the beginning of these classes, this composition class, for us to be reading. We could read anything. I could have read that people do articles on why Barbie is, 40 years old and, all this kind of stuff. But yes, but I want these articles to get in touch with us as human beings and how we think and how we feel and how, how different things influence us, right? And so we're moving into more topical essays that we will read in the class that deal with who we are as individuals and who we are as people and who we are, sometimes as different groups of people that may experience different obstacles to progress here in society. And so I had us look at read Chimamanda. I sent you text for the text talk, and I also asked you to take a look at it, and we'll take a peek at it. I won't play the whole thing because I think that, I think it's about 15 minutes long. And so that's a good, delicious chunk of time in class that we could use talking about it instead. And so that's why I wanted you to at least see it at home a little bit, so that when we talk about it, that you're not totally staring at your screen or at me on the screen saying like, what is the professor talking about? Because I didn't see the video. That I wanted you to see it so that you could have it, understand there's a assumption that you've seen it and that you can connect on it. But before that, I wanted to just, before we dive into Chimamanda's video, I wanted us to share a video. Now I have to make sure I could do this. I was setting it up during the break. But this just in general, right? I think one of the things that I think is wonderful about being in college in a classroom is that we have the capacity to learn, about, different things sometimes, or things that we, may feel a certain kind of way, that we, have at least a space to be able to discuss it. And let me just get, and one more second, just had it up. Did you all hear that ad? No, you didn't hear. Okay, so I think someone told me go to audio, audio settings, then Okay, so okay. Let's see. Share whiteboard, share. Let's see. I'm going to share a video with you, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it. And Victor, since I can see you, if you can hear it, can you give me a thumbs up? Okay. Can you all see that? Can you see with my audio settings? Okay.
Can you click on, yeah, click on that real quick. Same as system. And then let's try that maybe. Still can't hear it.
No?
Yeah, we still can't hear it. I don't know, that's weird.
No? I need my tech guy, echo cancellation. Statistics.
Oh, go into screen share. Maybe the audio is under that tab says that says screen share. Maybe that's where you can find the audio input. Because we can still hear you clearly. So I'm assuming maybe the screen share audio is. Oh, can you hear me? Yeah, you
I
can.
can hear you.
Mhm.
Oh, it's interesting. You can hear me clearly?
Yeah, I can. Yeah, we can hear you speaking. We just can't hear the video. So maybe if you go to screen share and you change the audio input there, because we can hear your audio, we just can't hear anything that's happening on your screen. So maybe if we go to screen share, we can see, and we can make the audio from the show.
Here. Like here.
I can't see no more. All I see is the YouTube video, how to travel, how travel changes you.
Here we go. How about this?
No, we still don't hear the video. Could you possibly open that audio options again?
Oh, here. No?
No, we still don't hear it.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen. We just can't hear your audio. I mean, the screen audio.
But you can see that says where I'm sharing my screen share. Can you see that?
No, I don't think I
I
can.
just stopped the screen share. Okay. So annoying. So no one hears it? But like,
No.
No.
Yeah.
all right, I think I've done and everything. I don't understand why it's. Let me actually go here and share sound. Let's say share, right? And you gonna. That's great.
We can hear it.
Can you hear that?
Yeah, we heard that. Perfect.
Not this. Right? You didn't hear the you don't hear the YouTube video. You just hear the one that was in Blackboard.
We were able to hear both the YouTube video of how travel changes you, as well as in the homie video.
So now you can hear both.
Yeah, now we have your audio from screen share.
So let's see. And Victor, just speak out if you can't, okay? If you can't hear it.
This video is about me, but by the end of it, it's about you. Because this is the story of acceptance. For 18 years, I grew up as a Muslim in a small village this size. And in my personal world, I did not accept different religions or different people. I was a Muslim believing I was right. So this is the story of how I went from accepting no one to accepting everyone. One day I traveled outside of my Muslim village here to Varanasi, India, the Mecca of the Hindus, and once I landed there, I was shocked. Because I saw Hindus who believe there are millions of gods, not one, who believe this river is holy, who believe they must be burned after death. And as a Muslim, you do not agree with any of this. You tell yourself, they must be wrong and you must be right. They must be wrong and you must be right. Right. But soon you'll realize there is no right and there is no wrong. You don't have to agree with the 1 billion Hindus, but you must accept them as equals. This isn't just religion, this is everything else. When I first came to the United States, I made a new friend. He told me he wants to be a lawyer. I said that's okay. Then he told me he's gay. I said that's not okay. But then why is that not okay? Because it doesn't fit in my world? Then maybe my world is not big enough and that it's okay to be gay. It's okay to be Hindu. It's okay to be Muslim. It's okay to be whatever. The more you travel, the more you'll realize that maybe your village doesn't have all the answers. And that might be the hardest thing to realize in your life. I said this video is not about me because really, it's about you. Because one day you'll see something you don't like, something you think is wrong, and you'll say to yourself, I must be right. The truth is, no one is right and no one is wrong. The world is much bigger than a village, and the best way to live in it is to accept everyone for who they are.
There's a new way to vacation here. And stay.
Okay. The things we have to suffer through. Not the video, the ads of all the things. So just reactions to what we saw, any reactions, thoughts, anything at all.
I feel like this video was something that thousands, possibly millions of people tend to forget nowadays, because this doesn't apply with all people, but they have this philosophy of what they think or see as right and wrong, no matter how small or trivial it is, instead of accepting everything and everyone for what it is or who they are. They see some people or they see things as wrong because in their mind they think that it is wrong, when really there is no right or wrong. There's it's all just acceptance, and I think too many people, especially my generation, have forgotten about that.
Thank you, Logan. Thanks for that. Any other, what about other ideas? Any other comments, reflections, reactions, anything? Had anybody seen it before?
No, it's the first time I see it, and yeah, I mean, it's nice to see. Sometimes people gets blind, or they want to walk blind, like, I mean, in this case, I'm from Mexico, and like the media and all that stuff criticize us or criticize another countries, just like, I mean, I don't want to go too deep, but just like Donald Trump, like saying like we are rapists and all that stuff, but this is about, I mean, I like the video because this is about acceptance, like accepting the people, how they are, who they are, where they come from. And trying to open our eyes how to take that. I mean, I see this video in a good way because he's trying to let us know that there is more, how can I explain, more other cultures, and we are all different. I mean, I don't know if I explain myself, but this is it's a deep subject.
Yeah, I mean, thank you, Miguel and Logan and folks having for sharing these things. Yeah, in a way, this is the videos that called Daily Nas is the kind of channel, and it's and I think it's Yasin is the kind of the narrator of it, and he does all kinds of videos, but I found this one to be interesting, at least to spark a conversation, to spark thinking, right? Because I think if you look at the kind of structure, right, because it's almost an essay. If we took the transcript of it, he's writing an essay, right? And he gives you, at the beginning what his thesis is, and his thesis, this is about acceptance, right? And through the whole thing, he goes constructing section by section what he's talking about, and he gives you the background, the introduction. I'm Muslim, I come from this town, and this is how we think. And and then he couches that and continues developing that throughout the piece. Now it is interesting because I think one of the ideas that he's talking about is kind of like sometimes as human beings, like how do we believe what we believe, right? Like where do we get those ideas? And very often, sometimes, we get them from the very first places we learn, and that's at home, right? And usually from our parents or from our families or from the communities in which we grew up with. And then they got it from similar places, right? In his case, he also talks about how religion informs us, and many of us, whether we practice a form of religion or maybe have some other kind of spiritual practice, inside of that practice is a set of values. So how do we take these ideas, right, from society, from religion, and these values that help form the way we think, and then how do we now make decisions and live our lives and move through the world? And so a lot of times what he's proposing is that if you kind of stay inside of your world and your community and you all agree that there's, and that's a simplistic idea. There's a lot of simplicity inside of here, a very complex issue. I think Miguel said that at the end. He ended his comment that it's complex, and it is very complex. But anyway, his premise is that if we stay in these small areas, in the small neighborhoods or the small village or the small, and that could be literal or figurative, right? Because we live in the Bronx or New York City and it's way bigger, but sometimes we travel in these kind of little groups, right? And we stay in that group. That if we stay within those groups, right, that we all think the same, and then you form a certain kind of thinking, and sometimes going outside of those groups, that you start to see a bigger world, a bigger picture, and understanding that sometimes in order to protect the group, there's some ideas that were inside of that group to protect it, but really it's created by that group. So yeah, so these are complex ideas, but I think it's an interesting starting point for us to think about that as we start to explore the bigger world in which we live in, and discover and explore the bigger issues that affect us, and living, and particularly us that live in a place like New York City, where we do literally, you just take a subway, even post-pandemic, even during the pandemic, you get on the subway and you're going to see lots of different people. Right, from the stop that you get on and you look around the train, and from stop to stop, if you go from the Bronx to Harlem, to the Upper West Side, to Midtown, to the Village, to Brooklyn. I'm talking about if you take the 2 train, right? You're following that path, that you're going to be seeing all these people getting on and off the train, and there's a huge diversity. And then what he's proposing is like, how do we figure out, how do we accept, right? It doesn't mean that you have to embody all of the things that every single culture has, but at the very least, there is some level of acceptance that we have to at least agree upon in order for harmony to exist amongst people. Now, we know there's something idealistic about this because we live in a world where there is lots of things that are not harmonious, right? There's wars, there's political parties that are fighting each other at the moment. There's people that on the subway argue with each other for many different kinds of reasons. But at least it's a good starting point for an ideal, right, to think about. So anybody else want to share any comment or thought about the video? So yeah, so I think even right now, if you're silent and you're thinking, right, it's important to understand, just be in touch with what you're thinking, like how you're processing it. Like, I agree with him. I agree with this part. I disagree with that part. I really like this part. Oh, there's a lot of this I want to do. I want a copy of that video because I want to show it to somebody, whatever it is that because the link, I realize in the link in the, it's on your syllabus, but the link in the syllabus is not working. So I will send the link to everyone in case, so you have it, you have the link as well. So that we become in touch with how we're thinking as we're receiving information, right? As you're reading an essay, as you're reading, right? And remember, this is an opinion, right? This isn't like a doctrine, a fact. I mean, you might agree with it, but understand this is an opinion. We could have someone else that says, don't accept anything, like that kind of, there are people who literally will feel that. And so this brings us, right? We're going to build on the idea of acceptance, right, to the idea of what Chimamanda was talking about. Chimamanda Adichie Ngozi was talking about in her Danger of a Single Story. So one of your questions was, what is the danger of the single story? What did you think the danger of the single story was? Now I know you can answer this because I saw your answers. So some of you can answer this question. What was the danger of the single story that she was talking about? I hear a microphone. Someone is going to speak.
I'll speak.
Oh, thanks.
It's about like, it's about come here. It's about not not believing what somebody tells you, because there's always two sides to a story.
Yeah,
Basically.
yes, David, keep going. I'm sorry.
No, you go.
Yeah, well, yes, right. That was the premise of the single story, is that there may be more to the story than what you know, right? That's what Chimamanda is proposing, right? There's more to this. There could be more to that story. But what is the danger? What's danger? That's like a provocative word, right? She didn't say the problem of the single story. She said the danger of the single story.
The danger, is pushing a narrative towards one way when it's really not the way you're pushing it towards.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense? Come. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. What about other folks? What do you think the danger?
Something that it caught my attention and I see very dangerous. It's that she mentioned that when someone, how do you say, portrays you, like when someone keeps showing you as something. In this case, for example, the media, they are talking about like, oh, Africa, no food, oh, Africa, no medicine, oh, Africa. So unfortunately, when you think about Africa, you think about that, about what they say. It's the same thing with what I mentioned about Mexico. Oh, Mexico, drugs, criminals, blah, blah, blah. So I see that very dangerous. And in my opinion, I feel like people needs to be more knowledgeable about that, like trying to see. I'm gonna give an example. I went to Mexico, and one of my friends from here, he's American. He told me, "Hey man, can I go with you? I want to see Mexico." So when I took him to Mexico, he was so impressed. He told me, "Bro, I can't believe Mexico's cleaner than USA, than New York." And I was like, "Bro, let me tell you, people portrays us as something, but it's because it's the media." And I see, and that's something that in the other video with this lady, I forgot the name, she mentioned it, and I think that's very, very dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's some cool. Thank you so much, Miguel. Anyone else want to share a thought?
I'll give an example, like if two people have a fight, when they ask like one of them what happened, I think it's better to listen to the other side too before you make the judgment. I think she mentioned something like that too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to hear the other side. Well, I mean, I think what in a kind of what Chimamanda is doing in the piece is that, right, is saying, the examples she gives, right? Like when she says she came to college, her roommate had some of the ideas that I think were shared here, that if we only follow the stories that we're told about, and if we say Africa, like Africa is a continent, right? It's a continent. It's huge, right? That goes all the way from like South Africa up to like, Morocco and, Egypt and, all this, and, Ghana and Senegal and, and it's such a huge place. But when we have this idea of Africa, sometimes that gets presented to Americans, let's say, is it through media? Sometimes it's through literature, right? That it becomes monolithic. It becomes a single story. And if you believe that story to be the single story, then you, as Belayang said, as David said earlier, and Miguel are saying, that there's another side, there's more to it, right? I feel like a quote that Chimamanda says in it, she says the danger of the single story, right? She's talking about stereotypes, right? And stereotypes are things that are things that are identify people. And I could say, you know, like for those of you, if you don't know, part of my makeup, my cultural makeup is Puerto Rican. And so they always say that Puerto Ricans carry switchblades, right? That we always walked around with knives, right? So I don't have one, but, you know, and if I did, that might be okay because that is a part, it might be a part of the culture. But she says to make that the defining factor, to make that the single story is incomplete, right? So she says the problem with stereotypes is not that they are incorrect, but that they are incomplete, right? That they don't really talk about the full spectrum of who a person is. And in the piece, she talks about her experience coming from Africa. She's from Nigeria, coming from Africa to New York, from Nigeria to New York. And her roommate understanding she's from Africa and asked her for her tribal music. And if you remember what she says Mariah Carey. And so of course it's funny because Mariah Carey, you know, is a huge pop star. And so the roommate isn't expecting that. The roommate didn't even expect her to speak English, right? So yes, so it's interesting. She talks about herself that she traveled to Mexico, and as Miguel was sharing, sometimes we also have this impression of Mexico. And so when she went there, she was surprised, right? And she even took it home. Like as she said, her own parents, her mother was like, you know, the person that worked for them, she says, they're poor, they have nothing, right? And so she goes to visit and she says, my God, who made this basket? Like, what did you mean they have nothing, right? So if you believe these ideas, these single stories about people, that you don't really get a full spectrum of who people are. The danger, right, looks a lot of different ways, right? And if we pull an example from class that Miguel was speaking earlier, we were talking about the other piece, that there was this idea of immigrants coming from Mexico, or at least immigrants coming through Mexico from like Costa Rica and Honduras. And most recently, you know, we saw like a lot of tragic images of Haitian immigrants trying to come through Mexico. But there's this idea that they are either criminals or rapists, and that, you know, and there may be, right? I don't know. I could guess if you just randomly think, you know, a huge population, not everyone is perfect and wonderful and good-hearted. There are all kinds of people. But if we think that the image of the people that are coming are only that image, then of course you can understand why a group of people become so red-faced and angry and feeling like something has to be done to stop them all from coming through, right? Because that is when, you know, the reality of this story, if we look at this, if we all took our cameras off, I know we all come from somewhere else. And that doesn't only mean race. There also be, you know, because there's a lot of people, you know, in the Bronx, we could say the communities that are Irish and, you know, and German and Italian that are not, that immigrated over here from other countries. So in a way, the way this country was built was about immigration and about migration, right? And people coming from other countries to find better lives and build and create and contribute. And so this single story, sometimes if we just focus on immigration, the single story sometimes that are told about immigration in this country is one that is incomplete, right? Because we're smarter, we know, we come from those places, right? And so we know this, the bigger idea of a single story. But I think both these videos and both these things to look at so we can be able to begin to understand more complex text that we're going to be reading in the classroom. Let me just go to the chat because there's some greatness that's happening in the chat. The video of it. Oh, Victor's sharing. You want me to read it, Victor? Or do you?
Yeah, if you want, I can quickly go over what I was saying, because I really liked how you explained the stereotyping of things and how a stereotype can, you know, we need to understand that when other people give their narrative of their country, of themselves, of their personhood, that we accept their narrative and we don't begin to like decline them, right? And many African historians and people who discuss the stratification of current day Africa realize that a lot of the impact that we see in modern day Africa comes from European colonialism that has devastated many of the country's regions, particularly in their resources, and how that colonialism allows Europe to be Europe and the Americas to be the wealthiest countries on the planet today. It is because of slavery. It is because of the scrambling of the African continent. And it is because of imperialism and colonialism that Europe and America are the most prominent superpowers on this planet. So, it's one of the things like, hopefully, this lesson teaches us that there is no single story. And instead, we need to look into the history, and we need to, read the testimonials of people, and, look at them. That's it. That's what I want to say. My bad. I just really love this entire thing. It's amazing. Sorry.
Cool, that's fine. No, it's great for sharing. I mean, but that's the great thing, that we can be in a classroom together, that we've come together for this purpose, right? Because I think one of the things that we learned from the essays that we've read, both How to Get Our Minds to Read and also Is Google Making Us Stupid, is for us to be able to slow down, right? And to think about things, right? And to be able to understand the ways in which we're influenced and the way in which we think. And so if you just take both the articles and you say, you know what, basically saying you got to sit with this for a minute, and that we're not used to it, right? That we're not used to it. I'm going to give you a personal example, and it's 3 o'clock. Okay, then I got to switch gears. So a personal example, there's an article that came out recently called Who is a Bad Art Friend, right? And it's about writers, right? And it's about one writer who did this, what she calls, and I saw my fingers, I was gonna put the quotes and I put them down. So there's a writer who felt like they did an altruistic act. They did something out of the goodness of their heart, right? And the act they did was they donated a kidney, right? Not to a family member, not to someone in the community. They just donated a kidney because they understood that people in the world need kidney. And they felt like, if I want to do something powerful and altruistic, that's what altruism means, like giving without receiving. Like you're going to give and you don't want nothing in return, right? So she did this act, and then she was in a writing group, and then she kind of posted it on Facebook, and then started tracking who was liking and commenting. And if people didn't comment, she started calling them up to say, hey, did you see what I did? That I posted this thing on Facebook, and that I did this act, this tremendous act. And they were like, oh yeah, that was amazing, right? Somebody in her writing group then had a reaction to her and wrote a story that really was examining altruism, like, and examining what does it mean to be kind, and did not make this person look so kind in their story, because they were like, well, if you did it, okay, great, but then you post about it, and then you start basically stalking people to find out if then what's the altruism? You do want something, you want validation, right? So they were doing an examination of this. Anyway, I can talk to you about this for the entire class, but the point of this is that the article, I should tell you, I left the most important thing out. I know some of these people, right, that did it. So it's like, I know them. But the article was long. It was a long article. And so I started reading it, and then I started skimming it, and I started thinking about our articles that we're reading in class. And I was seeing myself literally doing what they said. I had such a hard time, even though I knew the person, the people that were in it, even though like I was and it took me like concentration to say, Charles, read the whole article, because you want to talk about it to your friends, and you don't want to be talking about it not having read the whole thing from beginning to end. And I'm glad I did, right? But just again, I'm using my personal example so that you could look at your example as that there is a challenge sometimes because of how we become used to looking at things very quickly and fast with the internet. So that is a challenge. But I did read the whole article, and then there were 2 other articles that were written on it, and it's this big buzz in the writing world. And there's more to it, but that's not the point of this class. But the point of my example is to understand that even your professor has challenges focusing and reading very long articles, and he writes fiction, which is very long, things that people require, concentration on. But getting back to the pieces that we read, that so some of this is a little bit is preparing us, right? Because we're going to encounter some text that may cause us to think about things a little more deeply, that may raise certain issues, and we understand kind of the origins of some of these things. And I feel that with Chimamanda's video, that was a powerful statement, right? A powerful statement for us to think about, that she uses the word danger, right? And danger, let's just stay with the word danger, and let's I want us to think about that, that how can these ideas, right? Because they're basically ideas, right? And beliefs, how they could manifest themselves into something dangerous, right? Or how have they manifested themselves into something dangerous? So think about that. So I want to talk about the next class before we end. I always imagine ending early. We ended early last time, right? So give me one class, I let you out early, right? Before the end of the class. But so all right, in terms of writing, right now, I want you to look at the Is Google Making Us Stupid? We talked about that. And we talked about how people outlined it, and that was great. So now I do want you to try to take those and hammer them, craft them into a thesis statement. This will be another opportunity to do that. You'll have to do it by Sunday. I'm going to comment on the comments that are there. Some of you, we use them in class, so you kind of got a little bit of the comments anyway, but I'll comment on it so that if you can do that and write maybe in that very same one, I'll ask you to, and I'll send the email, just, do another reply or another edit, and then do the right from your, if you're one of the people that did the outlining, right there, hit reply and write your thesis statement right into that one. One quick second, let me just get my, yeah. And then I want you to, where are we at here? And then I just lost you. I can see my screen. Okay, there you go. I was looking at something. So then I'm going to also send you a note on to read a piece called Introduction to it's a collection of essays. We're not going to read the collection of essays called The Fire This Time. And in it, we're going to read the introduction to it. And then we're also going to read a short story. And so then from that, we will have a writing assignment. But for now, I want us to be able to read the text. I wanted to set us up a little bit so we can begin reading the text. The text is the introduction to something called The Fire This Time. And it's The Fire This Time, I'll tell you about it in a second, 306, okay, tell you about it in a second. So I want you, so just so you're clear, now you're gonna hammer a thesis statement. So it's a small bite, but it's an important bite, right? That I want you to do for Is Google Making Us Stupid? If those of you feel like you're ready to do a draft of it, to do the essay, I'm not going to stop you. I'm going to open up the window, right? So if you want to take do that, the draft will not be due, not Sunday like I originally said. It will be due on Thursday, right, of the week. So that way we have a chance to come back together. You can ask questions, and you'll have a few days to get the next essay in. And then I'm going to ask you to read the introduction to Jesmyn Ward's, and I'll give you one question to respond to it. So you'll have that. So you have a thesis statement and a writing response to do, not a whole essay, but just a response for the next class off of a reading. And then, but shortly after that, you'll have an essay due. So just keep your time management in mind so that you understand the steps to things. And then I'll stop there. I'll ask questions, and then I'll talk a little bit about the fire, what I was going to say about the fire this time. Any questions? Reflections? Thoughts? Okay. So The Fire This Time is a collection of essays that was written, I don't know, 5 years ago, 6 years ago, maybe 7 years ago. Yes, it was written in 2016, I believe they came out. But it's also reflecting to an essay by someone who we're going to read later on called The Fire Next Time, right? And it was an important essay written by a writer named James Baldwin. We'll talk a little bit more about James Baldwin. We'll get to know him, right? And we'll read one of his essays, a pivotal essay of his. And but it's kind of a response to that, right? And just so you all know, all of that has a biblical reference, right? If you know any of the stories of the Bible, one of the stories of the Bible was, if you are not, if you, let's just use this as in terms of, as this Bible story. So one of the stories of the Bible is, the world got created, right? and God created the world. If you follow the regular, the Judeo-Christian kind of Bible, you know, there was creation and there was a God who created everything, right? And then everything existed, but according to this Judeo-Christian Bible as well, that God was like, things were crazy, and I have to destroy the whole earth. And so he found Noah and told Noah, you and your wife and your family, we need to preserve something, so, right? And so I want you to build a giant ark, and I want you and your wife and your family, whoever else wants to come in there, to be together, and then take 2 animals of each kind, because then the ark is going to float, and for 40 days and 40 nights, it's going to rain. It's going to drown everything and kill everybody. And then the rain's going to go away, and then the ark is going to be okay. And then now you have to repopulate the earth, right? With the animals have to create more animals, the human beings have to make babies, and right? So then they said that if God said that if I need to destroy the earth again, next time will be fire. This time was water, next time will be fire, right? So that's what kind of alludes to the fire next time, is about this idea of destruction and rebirth. And so, and then James Baldwin wrote that article, and then many years later, decades later, a collection of essays called The Fire This Time. So just keep that in mind, the idea of destruction and rebuilding. And then that will be it. I'm good. I'm gonna go lay down. What about everybody else? Any other questions or thoughts? No. Then I want to thank you all for your time and your attention. David and Nahum and Jalan, thanks for being in workshop. Victor, if you can just stay on for like 1 minute after class, so we can just connect on that. And if not, if there are no questions, I'll see you all next week, and have a great week.
See you around, Professor.
All right, take care.
I didn't hear the beginning of part of this. I was in a clinic with my daughter. I didn't get to hear her. I heard the end part. I could stay till you leave. You can repeat yourself, and that's okay. Come on.
Say it again, David. I can't hear you.
I didn't get to hear the beginning part of the what we had to do, because I was in the clinic. I was talking to the nurse.
Okay. Basically, you have to craft a thesis statement for the Is Google Making Us Stupid? That one, the assignment that some of you did, and either were successful in outlining but not actually crafting a thesis statement. So that's to make the thesis statement. That's part 1. Then part 2 is to say there's gonna be an essay. I'll send you an email on it. There'll be an essay called Introduction to Jasmine Ward's The Fire This Time. So you have to read that, and you're going to respond to a prompt, and that's just a paragraph response, not a essay response. And then just a little heads up that you will have an essay due a week from Thursday, not this Thursday, but the following Thursday, that's based on the thesis statement that you have to write by Sunday. And that's what's going to be.
That's 3 different essays?
Say it again?
That's 3 different essays you got to do?
So that one more time.
That's 3 different essays? Which one?
Which one?
No, I'm sorry. I was talking about daughter, which ice cream she wanted.
Okay.
I said that's 3 different essays you got to do.
Here you talk to me like that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'm joking, Dave. So yes, so it's either the next essay is going to be on Is Google Making Us Stupid? You hear me go. So the next essay will be on Is Google Making Us Stupid? There's a prompt that's talking about how 3 ways Google or the internet are how they're affecting people. And so the second step, like I said, at this point, is to write a thesis statement for it. And then, but the actual essay will be due a week from Thursday. The actual essay will be due on the 20th. Okay. All right, everybody. Well, take care. Just I'm gonna put
All these essays you're gonna put inside the discussion, right? Correct?
yeah, yes.
Okay.
All right. So
Yeah.
Victor, I'm just going to put the stragglers in a waiting room. I notice when I put them in the waiting room, they sign off.
Okay, yeah, it's so odd. I've never had so many students wanting to stay in class before. I remember when I first did my online classes, people were leaving like 4 minutes before the professor spoke. It was really bad. It's okay though. So how's it going, Professor?
Good. So how did that small group work go?
I think it went really well. Jalan, I think it is, doesn't have audio, so I couldn't speak with him. So I was just kind of like trying to direct him on what to do. But besides him, everyone else had audio, and I think they had a similar problem where they either had the beginnings of a thesis statement where X person is your VIP, right? That's going to be the basis of that. And then each of their body paragraphs were kind of like, in my opinion, just didn't really have any organization. We're just kind of like, here are all the reasons why I love this person. And it's like, that's exactly what the assignment's asking you, but we need to kind of, utilize that thesis to create 3 to 4 body paragraphs of one central idea where we give a story of this person, and then we explain why from that story that person's our VIP. I gave them the example of, like I said, what was it? I was okay. I gave an example of my father. I was like, my father is a very generous and. Let me just read it actually. And this is the example I gave them for a body paragraph, because I think Jalan was just kind of listing reasons as why his mother was like a big influence in his life. And I was trying to get them to understand that the point of the essay is to kind of explain how is to give how you say, why can't I speak right now? is to give